The galaxy was silent, a vast expanse speckled with the lights of a million civilizations, each unaware of the other's true nature. Humanity had stepped out from the cradle of Earth with eyes full of wonder and hearts brimming with hope. For decades, this optimism fueled their expansion across the stars. Colony ships spread like dandelion seeds on the solar winds, each finding a place to root in distant, uncharted systems. Trade routes blossomed, drawing lines of connection between the scattered outposts of human endeavor. Yet in this age of exploration, humanity was not alone. The universe, vast beyond understanding, harbored other wills, other intentions. When first contact was made with the Kilrathi, a collective of species bound together more by necessity than friendship, it was marked not by the universal gestures of peace, but by the stark clarity of mutual suspicion. The Kilrathi, with their sharp features and sharper minds, governed a swath of territory uncomfortably close to the newest human colonies. The initial exchanges were cautious, formal, and laden with the potential for profound alliance or devastating conflict. However, peace proved fleeting. Disputes over mining rights on resource-rich asteroids quickly escalated, and diplomatic words cooled into silent standoffs. The Kilrathi, interpreting a human exploratory maneuver as a territorial encroachment, launched a surprise attack on one of the outer human colonies, New Haven. The assault was devastating. Cities burned, families were torn apart, and the thin fabric of trust that had begun to form was shredded. The response from Earth was swift and unequivocal. Broadcasts were sent not just to the Kilrathi but across known space, echoing through star systems and reaching every sentient ear. The message was simple and stark, a line drawn not in the sand, but in the void of space. Your worlds will burn. It was a warning of retaliatory fury, born from the ashes of New Haven, signaling that humanity would not cower or capitulate. Under the stern leadership of Admiral Sarah Lyons, humanity's response was meticulously planned. The United Terran Fleet, a formidable armada that had lain dormant in anticipation of such a need, was mobilized. Lyons, a veteran of space warfare with a mind as strategic as it was unyielding, understood the gravity of her orders. Her ships were equipped with the latest in warfare technology, including the dreaded firestorm devices, weapons capable of igniting the atmospheres of entire planets, turning air into a weapon of mass destruction. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, targeting the strategic military outposts of the Kilrathi, the mood among the crew was a complex tapestry of fear, anger, and determination. They were not merely soldiers. They were avengers, carriers of the fiery promise made by their leaders. The final moments before the jump were tense. Admiral Lyons stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Resolute, her eyes fixed on the star map displaying their targets. Around her, the crew went about their duties in a silence that was almost reverent. The weight of their task hung over them, a palpable presence that filled the ship. With a silent nod, Lyons gave the order, and space itself seemed to fold. The fleet disappeared from Earth's orbit, a specter of vengeance streaking across the cosmos towards the unsuspecting worlds of the Kilrathi. As the stars shifted and blurred into the lines of hyperspace, the human warning echoed once more across the void, a stark reminder of the fire soon to be unleashed. The void of space was broken by the emergence of the United Terran Fleet, the vanguard of humanity's wrath, emerging from hyperspace with the grim purpose that had been broadcast across the stars. Admiral Sarah Lyons observed the real-time feeds from the reconnaissance drones that swarmed ahead of the main fleet, like a cloud of vigilant eyes. The target was a Kilrathi military installation on Drathari, a barren moon orbiting a gas giant in a system claimed under the aggressive expansion of the Kilrathi Confederation. The base was a critical hub, coordinating logistics and fleet movements across the sector, making it the perfect first strike to cripple the enemy's operational capabilities. The attack commenced with a calculated precision that was chilling in its efficiency. Stealth bombers cloaked from enemy sensors pierced through the Kilrathi defenses, depositing their payloads of firestorm devices into the atmosphere. These devices, once activated, would not simply explode. They were designed to ignite a chemical reaction in the atmosphere itself, turning the air into a seething inferno that would consume everything flammable within its reach. From the bridge of the Resolute, Lyons and her crew watched as the first signs of chaos became visible even from orbit. Bright flares blossomed on the surface of Drathari, rapidly expanding into roaring firestorms. The Kilrathi base, visible as a complex of geometric structures from the fleet's vantage point, was soon enveloped in a hellish blaze. The transmission feeds from the surface became garbled, then fell silent as the flames overwhelmed the communication systems. Yet the victory was not without resistance. Kilrathi warships, caught off guard but quick to react, scrambled from their docks in a desperate attempt to retaliate. Lyons knew that the element of surprise would not last long, and the human fleet had to capitalize on the momentum. Fighter squadrons launched in dense swarms, clashing with Kilrathi fighters in the cold void above Drathari. The space around the moon became a chaotic dance of dodging, firing, and strategic retreats. Amidst this orchestration of warfare, Lyons maintained a calm that bordered on the stoic. Each report that came to her was met with quick, decisive commands. Her experience in space combat was unparalleled, and her reputation as a tactician was only further cemented with each passing moment of the engagement. Her orders were clear: disable the Kilrathi ships, capture if possible, but leave no operational warship that could threaten the fleet's withdrawal. The battle raged for hours, the void echoing with the silent screams of ships torn asunder. Human forces, though outnumbered at times, utilized their superior technology and the audacity of their tactics to maintain the upper hand. Admiral Lyons watched as the tides turned with each minor victory, her face a mask of resolve lit by the glow of the tactical displays. As the last Kilrathi ship was neutralized, a somber realization settled over the fleet. The moon below, now a glowing testament to human fury, was a stark reminder of the warning humanity had issued. Lyons allowed herself a moment to reflect on the cost of this first strike, not just in material or lives, but in the irreversible step towards total war they had taken. "Prepare for the next phase," she finally ordered, her voice steady. "This was just the beginning. We've shown them our resolve. Now we need to maintain the pressure and keep pushing forward." The fleet began regrouping, repairing, and rearming. The victory at Drathari was complete, but it was just the opening move in what would be a long and brutal chess game against the Kilrathi. As the ships of the United Terran Fleet vanished into hyperspace once more, the burning moon was left behind, a silent witness to the destructive potential of human wrath and a beacon of warning to all who might still doubt the resolve of Earth. Back on Earth, the mood was a complex tapestry of tension and triumph. News of the fiery destruction of the Kilrathi outpost on Drathari had spread like wildfire through the human colonies. For many, it was a moment of grim satisfaction, a sign that humanity would not lie down in the face of aggression. However, for the leaders and strategists at the United Terran Command, the victory was just the beginning of a much larger and uncertain campaign. In the Situation Room, a large, dimly lit chamber under the United Nations Space Command headquarters, diplomats and military leaders gathered around a holographic map of the galaxy. The sectors under Kilrathi control glowed a menacing red, encroaching on the blue hues of human space. Admiral Sarah Lyons, fresh from her command duties, stood with a stoic expression, detailing the fleet's status and their need for reinforcements and resources. "The initial strike was a success," Lyons reported. "But the Kilrathi will retaliate, and we need to be ready. They control key hyperspace lanes that could cut off our colonies in the Outer Rim. We cannot allow them to consolidate their forces." Meanwhile, Earth's diplomats were working tirelessly, reaching out across dark space to potential allies. The Zenithians, known for their neutrality and advanced technology, were top of the list. Their ability to tip the scales of any conflict made them invaluable, but they were notoriously reclusive and diplomatic engagement was slow. Captain Michael Sun, a charismatic officer with a diplomatic background, was selected to lead the mission to the Zenithian homeworld. His ship, the Vindicator, was a state-of-the-art diplomatic vessel, equipped not just for deep space travel, but also for the intricacies of interstellar diplomacy. As the Vindicator prepared for departure, Sun briefed his diverse crew, emphasizing the importance of their mission. "We're not just carrying messages," he told them in the ship's main briefing room. "We're carrying hope. The hope that by joining forces, we can put an end to this conflict and prevent further loss. The Zenithians are our best chance at turning the tide. We need to succeed." The journey to the Zenithian sector was fraught with risks. Kilrathi patrols were more frequent, and the shadow of their warships loomed large in every uncharted jump point. The Vindicator had to navigate through less traveled routes, using gravitational slingshots around gas giants and weaving through asteroid fields to avoid detection. Throughout the journey, Captain Sun spent long hours with his senior officers, poring over every piece of intelligence on the Zenithians. Their culture revered balance and harmony, and their decisions were often driven by a complex mix of pragmatism and philosophical doctrine. Winning them over would require more than just showcasing the threat of the Kilrathi. It would necessitate demonstrating how aligning with humanity could restore balance to the troubled galaxy. As the Vindicator finally entered the Zenithian system, a breathtaking view welcomed them. The Zenithian homeworld was a jewel of blues and greens, orbiting a serene white star. The approach was carefully managed, every protocol and formal greeting rehearsed to perfection, as they awaited permission to enter orbit. The tension among the crew was palpable. So much depended on the upcoming negotiations, not just for the mission, but for the future of human space. In the deep space beyond human and Zenithian borders, the Kilrathi were indeed marshalling their forces. Reports of fleet movements and whispered rumors of a new Kilrathi weapon began to reach Earth's intelligence networks. The stakes were higher than ever, and as the Vindicator eased into orbit around the Zenithian world, the eyes of humanity turned towards Captain Sun, waiting for the outcome that would perhaps decide their fate in this escalating war. The starship Vindicator, under the command of Captain Michael Sun, maintained a discreet orbit around the Zenithian homeworld, a planet where city lights twinkled against the twilight of dense, lush forests and deep blue oceans. The Zenithians themselves were an enigmatic race, their features marked by shimmering skin that reflected the hues of their tranquil world, and eyes that hinted at a deep collective wisdom. Captain Sun and his delegation were transported to the surface in a shuttle that glided smoothly through the stratosphere, headed toward the Zenithian Council's Grand Assembly Hall. The Zenithian Council chamber was an architectural marvel, constructed of materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light, creating a sense of being both within a structure and part of the cosmos itself. As Captain Sun stepped into the chamber, he felt the weight of his mission press upon him. He was not just a military man. Today he was a diplomat, perhaps the most crucial in human history. The council welcomed him with a serene dignity, their leader, High Counselor Talon, addressing him with a calm and measured tone. "Captain Sun, we are aware of the conflicts that burn like wildfires at the edges of your territory. We seek harmony and wish to understand how we might aid in restoring balance without perpetuating further destruction." Captain Sun responded with equal formality, laying out the situation with clarity. "High Counselor, the Kilrathi have shown that they will not hesitate to use brutal force to expand their dominion. We seek to defend ourselves and ensure the security of all peaceful beings in the galaxy. Your influence and technological advancements could help mediate this crisis." As the negotiations proceeded, back in human space, the echoes of war grew louder. Admiral Lyons, monitoring the situation from aboard the Resolute, received troubling reports of Kilrathi movements. The enemy was not sitting idle. Their ships were amassing near a crucial junction in the Vespera system, a point that controlled several critical trade routes and could serve as a launching pad for deeper incursions into human territory. Determined not to let the situation escalate further without a response, Lyons ordered a reconnaissance mission to gather more detailed intelligence. Stealth fighters slipped past Kilrathi patrols, their pilots among the best the United Terran fleet had to offer. They returned with images and data that confirmed the worst. The Kilrathi were indeed preparing for a major offensive, possibly with a new class of battleship that outgunned anything in the human arsenal. Meanwhile, on the Zenithian homeworld, Captain Sun worked tirelessly to bridge the cultural and philosophical divides that separated human urgency from Zenithian contemplation. He attended cultural events, engaged with local scholars, and participated in their meditative practices to better understand their perspectives and build trust. Each gesture of goodwill was meticulously planned to demonstrate humanity's respect for Zenithian values and their earnest desire for peace. The discussion stretched into hours that turned into days. Each session was intense, the Zenithians probing deeply into the ramifications of forming an alliance with humanity. They were particularly concerned about the potential for escalating violence, wary of joining a conflict that could spread like a contagion through the galaxy. As Captain Sun presented more evidence of Kilrathi atrocities and their disregard for non-combatant life, the Zenithians began to see that their cherished balance was already under threat, not from the potential of war, but from the certainty of Kilrathi aggression. This realization marked a turning point in the talks, and slowly, the Council's skepticism transformed into a cautious willingness to consider a strategic partnership. In the midst of these critical negotiations, an urgent message from Admiral Lyons reached Captain Sun, coded and direct. The Kilrathi were on the move and time was running out. The captain understood the gravity of his next words to the Council. They could very well decide the fate of many worlds, including his own. Back on the flagship Resolute, the mood had shifted dramatically. As the United Terran fleet braced for the expected Kilrathi offensive, Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Nora Kane stumbled upon anomalies within the ship's secure communications network. The inconsistencies were subtle, almost dismissively so, but to a trained eye like Nora's, they screamed of clandestine tampering. Hours of meticulous analysis confirmed her worst fears. There was a mole aboard the Resolute. This discovery came at the worst possible time. Admiral Lyons was coordinating a multifaceted defense strategy, preparing to deploy the fleet across several potential hotspots as Kilrathi forces gathered strength. The presence of a traitor within their midst could undermine not only these preparations, but also the security of their entire operational network. Nora brought her findings directly to Admiral Lyons, who received the news with a grim acknowledgement of the betrayal's implications. They convened an emergency meeting with the senior command staff, carefully selected for their loyalty and integrity. "We have a breach," Lyons began, her voice steady despite the turmoil the news wrought. "Our priority is to root out this traitor swiftly and silently. We cannot afford panic or paranoia among the crew at such a critical juncture." The task of unmasking the mole was arduous. Surveillance data was re-examined, communication logs were dissected, and behavior analysis was applied to every member of the crew who had access to the compromised systems. Every action was carried out under the highest secrecy, for they knew that if the spy were alerted to their suspicion, it could lead to drastic actions, including sabotage or assassination. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Vindicator continued its delicate diplomatic dance with the Zenithians. Captain Sun received the dire news from Admiral Lyons, which cast a shadow over his ongoing efforts. The revelation of a traitor within the Terran ranks would certainly make the Zenithians question the stability and trustworthiness of their potential allies. With this in mind, Captain Sun chose to withhold the information from the Zenithian Council, fearing it might derail the fragile progress of the negotiations. The situation on the Resolute reached a critical point when Nora Kane, through a combination of technical acumen and investigative prowess, identified a suspect, a communications officer who had recently transferred from a border patrol unit. The officer's records were immaculate, a little too perfect, as Nora discovered discrepancies that had been expertly covered up. With discreet precision, a trap was set for the officer. A fake message detailing a fictitious fleet movement was funneled through a channel that only the suspect could access. When the information predictably found its way to Kilrathi hands, the trap snapped shut. The officer was apprehended in the middle of transmitting another batch of critical data to a covert Kilrathi contact. The interrogation was swift. Under the pressure of undeniable evidence and the grim reality of facing charges of treason during wartime, the officer broke down and confessed. He revealed that the Kilrathi had blackmailed him, threatening his family who lived on a colony near the disputed border. It was a personal weakness exploited with cold calculation by the enemy. Armed with this knowledge and the resolution of the immediate threat, Admiral Lyons felt a cold anger settle within her. The betrayal was a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities within even the most secure systems. It reinforced the need for absolute vigilance as they prepared to face the looming Kilrathi assault, which, according to the latest intelligence, was imminent. As the fleet rallied from the crisis, renewed in their caution and resolve, the Resolute set course toward the anticipated point of conflict, ready to confront the Kilrathi with a unity forged in the fire of betrayal and reaffirmed commitment to their cause. The silence of space around the Vespera system was deceptive, a calm before the inevitable storm. Admiral Sarah Lyons watched from the bridge of the Resolute as her fleet took positions across key strategic points. The gathered intelligence indicated that the Kilrathi were planning a significant push through this system, aiming to break the lines and pour into the more vulnerable sectors of human-controlled space. Lyons was determined not to let that happen. Preparations were exhaustive. Each ship in the fleet had been refitted and resupplied. The crews briefed on the multitude of scenarios they might face. The air was thick with anticipation. Every soldier, pilot, and officer knew the gravity of the battle to come. It wasn't just about defending territory. It was about demonstrating to the Kilrathi that humanity would not be intimidated, that their resolve was as unyielding as the hulls of their ships. As the first Kilrathi ships warped into the system, their arrival was met with a barrage of artillery fire from human defenses. The initial skirmishes were fierce, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. Lyons's tactics were bold, leveraging the fleet's agility over the brute force of Kilrathi cruisers. Human fighters darted through the enemy formations, targeting supply lines and exposing the larger ships to follow-up strikes from the heavier human vessels. On the Resolute, Lyons maintained a steady command, issuing orders with a calm precision that belied the chaotic fury of battle unfolding around her. Her plan was to weaken the Kilrathi's forward momentum, and then use a series of coordinated strikes to disrupt their command structure, sowing confusion and disarray. In the midst of the space battle, a team of special operatives led by Commander Jake Harmon was deployed on a high-risk mission. Their target was a Kilrathi dreadnought that housed a significant portion of the enemy's command and control capabilities. Using a stealth shuttle to bypass the enemy's perimeter defenses, Harmon and his team infiltrated the massive ship, moving quickly towards their objective. The interior of the Kilrathi dreadnought was a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. But Harmon's team was prepared. They engaged in intense firefights with Kilrathi soldiers, pushing forward with relentless determination. The objective was clear: disable the dreadnought's communication arrays and, if possible, capture its command deck. Back in space, the battle reached a fever pitch. Lyons watched as the reports came in. The Kilrathi were pressing hard, but human forces were holding their ground, their lines bending but not breaking. It was a brutal dance of attack and counterattack, each move countered by an equally fierce response. Meanwhile, aboard the dreadnought, Harmon's team reached the communication hub, planting explosive charges and sabotaging the systems. The explosion that followed was not just a physical blow, but a strategic one, severing the Kilrathi fleet's neural network. Without their command communications, the Kilrathi ships were thrown into disarray, unable to coordinate their attacks effectively. Seizing the moment, Lyons ordered a full-scale assault. The human fleet, energized by the success of Harmon's mission, pushed forward with renewed vigor. Kilrathi ships, now isolated and confused, were picked off one by one, their formations disintegrating under the coordinated human attack. As the final Kilrathi ships retreated, leaving behind a debris field that once was a formidable fleet, the humans celebrated their hard-fought victory. Admiral Lyons allowed herself a brief moment of pride as she looked over her crew, their faces weary but elated. They had done more than win a battle. They had struck a significant blow against the Kilrathi war machine, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, human ingenuity and courage could prevail. The victory at Vespera was a turning point in the war, a testament to the human spirit's resilience, and a clear message to any who doubted their resolve. But Lyons knew this was only a chapter in the ongoing conflict, a brief respite in a war that was far from over. As the fleet began recovery operations, she turned her attention to the next phase, ready to continue the fight for humanity's place among the stars. In the aftermath of the battle in the Vespera system, the debris of destroyed Kilrathi and human ships drifted through space. a grim reminder of the cost of victory. As the United Terran Fleet began the process of recovery and repair, Admiral Sarah Lyons turned her attention to the broader strategic implications of their recent success. Despite their victory, the reality was stark. Every ship lost, every life sacrificed, brought home the brutal toll of this interstellar conflict. Meanwhile, the diplomatic efforts on the Zenithian homeworld had reached a pivotal moment. Captain Michael's son, after days of intense negotiations and cultural exchanges, had finally secured a tentative agreement for support. The Zenithians, moved by the evidence of Kilrathi aggression and convinced of the threat to galactic stability, agreed to provide technological support and strategic intelligence to the human forces. It was a significant achievement, marking the first time the reclusive Zenithians had allied with another species. The news of the Zenithian alliance boosted morale across human-controlled space. Broadcasts hailed the diplomatic breakthrough as a turning point in the war, a sign that humanity was not alone in its struggle against the Kilrathi menace. For many, it was a beacon of hope, a signal that the tide might be turning in their favor. As Admiral Lyons coordinated with Zenithian advisors to integrate their advanced technology into the fleet, a new plan began to take shape. This plan focused not only on defending human territories, but on taking the fight directly to the Kilrathi. The integration of Zenithian technology, particularly in the fields of shield enhancement and weapon accuracy, gave the human fleet a much-needed edge. On the front lines, the effects of these enhancements were immediate. Human ships were able to hold their positions longer, inflict more damage, and maneuver with previously impossible precision. The morale among the troops soared as they witnessed firsthand the advantages they now held. Every victory, no matter how small, was celebrated as proof that the war was shifting in their favor. However, the brutal reality of war continued to exact a heavy toll. Commander Jake Harmon, who had become a hero for his daring raid on the Kilrathi dreadnought, was tasked with leading a ground assault on a Kilrathi-controlled planet crucial for its shipbuilding capabilities. The battle was fierce, with heavy casualties on both sides. The urban warfare environment proved challenging, with Kilrathi forces entrenched and well-prepared. The fighting dragged on for weeks, with neither side willing to yield. The streets of the planet's capital became a labyrinth of death traps and sniper nests. Harmon and his team fought block by block, their progress measured in meters gained per day. The cost was high, but the strategic value of the planet made it a battle they could not afford to retreat from. Back on Earth, the public was shielded from the worst of the war's realities, but the continuous flow of casualty reports and the return of wounded soldiers painted a sobering picture. Families mourned, communities gathered to honor their fallen, and the war, once a distant concept fought in the depths of space, became a palpable presence in daily life. Amidst these challenges, a message of unity and resilience was broadcast by Earth's leaders. They spoke of the sacrifices made and the need to stand together to support the war effort in any way possible. The message resonated, sparking rallies and support drives, a collective effort to bolster the morale of those on the front lines. As Admiral Lyons reviewed the reports coming in from across the fleet, she felt a mix of pride and sorrow. The victories were hard won, and the losses were deeply felt. Yet the resolve to see the war through, to ensure that the sacrifices made were not in vain, remained unshaken. With the Kilrathi now on the defensive and new allies at their side, humanity pressed on, driven by the belief that peace was within reach, and the cost, though steep, was a price they were prepared to pay. The war had reached its zenith, with human forces pushing deeper into Kilrathi territories, buoyed by technological aid from their new Zenithian allies. The Kilrathi, facing losses on multiple fronts, began to falter under the relentless pressure. What had started as a series of skirmishes and tactical engagements had grown into a full-scale galactic war, and now it was drawing to a close. The human objective was no longer just survival, but a decisive end to the conflict. In the wake of the long and exhausting campaign, the landscape of space was irrevocably changed. Entire systems lay in ruin, their planets scarred by the ravages of war. The final push came when Admiral Lyons led a coalition fleet in a daring assault on the Kilrathi's stronghold, a fortress planet that was the administrative and military heart of their empire. The battle was brutal, with significant casualties on both sides, but the outcome was clear. The Kilrathi command structure was shattered, their fleet crippled, and their ability to wage war effectively was lost. As the dust settled and the last of the Kilrathi forces surrendered, the mood among the human fleet was somber. Victory had been achieved, but the cost was visible in the faces of every soldier, pilot, and officer. They had won, but the galaxy they had fought for was forever altered. The aftermath of the war was a time of rebuilding and reflection. Admiral Lyons, now regarded as a hero, was at the forefront of peace negotiations. The Kilrathi, humbled and broken, were not treated as vanquished foes but as future partners in rebuilding the galaxy. The terms of surrender were generous, focusing on disarmament, reparations, and the integration of Kilrathi systems into the broader galactic community under strict oversight to prevent future conflicts. Reconciliation efforts were extensive. Human and Zenithian mediators worked alongside Kilrathi representatives to address the deep-seated grievances and fears that had fueled the conflict. War crimes were addressed in tribunals that were fair but firm, seeking justice for the atrocities committed but also promoting forgiveness and healing. On Earth and across human colonies, the return of the fleet was met with mixed emotions. Relief and joy were tempered by grief for the lost and a deep weariness from the years of conflict. Memorials were erected on many worlds, dedicated to those who had sacrificed their lives for the cause of peace. These sites became symbols of the price of freedom and the enduring hope that such a conflict would never arise again. Captain Michael's son, who had played a critical role in securing Zenithian support during the war, took up a new role in the diplomatic corps, tasked with maintaining and strengthening the new alliances that had been forged in the fires of war. His efforts were focused on ensuring that the unity brought about by necessity would last beyond the immediate aftermath of battle. The rebuilding process was slow, with entire worlds needing to be reconstructed from the ashes of war. However, the spirit of cooperation that the conflict had engendered continued to flourish. Former enemies worked side by side to restore destroyed habitats, rebuild economies, and revive trade routes. The galaxy, once divided by fear and suspicion, began to heal, finding strength in its diversity and a shared desire for peace. As Admiral Lyons retired from her command, handing over the reins to a new generation of leaders, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The warning once issued to the Kilrathi had been severe, but it had stemmed from a desperate desire to protect humanity. In the end, the words that had sparked such a fierce conflict also brought about a fierce commitment to ensuring that no such warning would ever be necessary again. The legacy of the war, Lyons hoped, would not be the battles fought or the worlds burned, but the enduring peace built on the ruins, a peace that held the promise of a brighter future for all species in the galaxy.